The Talons of Weng Chiang has become somewhat controversial in recent years. For a long time it was considered one of the all-time classic stories, with excellent writing, superb direction, and memorable guest performances, all combining to make it one of the highlights of the era. But now it will probably never be repeated, and it may not even be released on iPlayer on November the 1st with the rest of the series. It's quite the contradiction, so let's get into it. First of all, we have to address the question of racism. Sadly, you can't ignore that all the Chinese characters in the show are depicted as evil, untrustworthy villains, and all the other characters regularly refer to them as yellow or little or worse, including the Doctor. There isn't a single non-white character in the show who's depicted at all positively, and that just would not stand today. The depiction of the lead villains is also highly problematic. The character of Mr. Sin, a walking, talking ventriloquist dummy, certainly makes for a memorable villain. But his face mask is drawn as a grotesque caricature of Chinese features, which is only made worse by the character having the brain of a pig. Most notably, the main villain of the first half, Lee Seng-chang, is played by a white actor in thick makeup. In fairness, John Bennett does give an excellent performance, full of layers. His stage persona plays up the accent, but offstage he's shown to be far more cultured and refined. And as the story goes along, he does eventually become a tragic figure, and his death scene is quite emotional. It's a wonderfully written and performed character, and if only it had been played by a Chinese actor, it would have been worthy of awards. So that's the negative stuff out of the way. What about the positives? Well, that's basically everything else, apart from the giant rat. Robert Holmes clearly had the time of his life writing this story. It's like a mashup of all sorts of Victorian pulp adventures, from Sherlock Holmes to Fu Manchu to the Phantom of the Opera, and the dialogue is exquisite, particularly all of Jago's alliterative tongue twisters. The structure is also quite interesting. For the first 4 parts, Chang is the major villain, and Greel is just off in the shadows. Then in part 4, Chang is brought down, and Greel takes over as the final villain with his own evil lair. So it's basically a 4-parter followed by a 2-parter, to ensure that the pacing never really drags. The direction is also extremely impressive, with lots of location shoots done at night, with the darkness and the thick fog all combined to make it far more atmospheric than usual. And the extensive use of a real theatre in all the theatre scenes is also invaluable. Unfortunately, the giant rat is never at all convincing, but then nowadays they'd probably use a CGI rat, which would be even worse. So there you go. The Doctor has a whole new costume for this story, and it's very Sherlock Holmes inspired, which does carry over into his performance. He's clearly enjoying himself very much for once, throwing himself into this Holmesian investigation with gusto. He's still not especially pleased to have Lena to look after, especially as she keeps killing people, but I suppose anyone would be a bit put out by that. The most memorable characters are definitely Jago and Lightfoot. Christopher Benjamin makes the most of his turn as Jago, a wonderfully drawn character whose pomposity and greed soon falls away to reveal an inner core of cowardice and vulnerability. And Trevor Baxter is equally likeable as the Dr. Watson-esque Lightfoot, ably assisting the Doctor and at the same time gently trying to civilise Leela. When the two of them team up for the final 2 episodes, it shouldn't work, as they've both been the Doctor's sidekicks so far, but they get on like a house on fire. Lightfoot brings out Jago's bravery, and they make a fine team. Big Finish have produced countless audio series featuring the two of them, and it's probably one of their best ranges, perhaps because it's delving into new territory, rather than just slavishly recreating the feel of old Doctor Who episodes. This is the final story of Season 14, and also the last one produced by Philip Hinchcliffe. And I've said it before, but this really feels like the end of an era. These 3 seasons have been of a consistently high quality, and are arguably the peak of classic Doctor Who. There are still many more good stories to come, of course, but the overall basic standard is never quite this high again. Of course, I could be wrong. I've still got another 12 seasons to rewatch, so my opinion could well change along the way. The DVD has more than 2 hours of extras, but they still made even more when they re-released it on the Revisitations box set. There's the hour-long documentary, Who's Doctor Who, which features lots of long clips from the first 14 years of the show, as well as footage of kids talking about their favourite bits, as well as some behind-the-scenes clips, such as how they made the giant rat. There's a clip from Pebble Mill with Philip Hinchcliffe being interviewed about the violence on the show, shortly before he got sacked for it being too violent, as well as 25 minutes of black and white studio footage, and a bunch of clips from Blue Peter showing you how to build your own Doctor Who theatre. I don't know if any kids ever did. Overall, it's a top quality story, but I have to mark it down for the racist elements, so I'll give it a 9. Next week it's Horror of Fang Rock, I remember that being a good one as well. So hopefully the rot hasn't set in yet. As ever, you can check out the link in the description to my playlist of all my Doctor Who reviews so far. And I'll see you next time.